Hey everybody, this is Zachary Jeans, and let's keep walking through the Bible. So today is day 51, and we are in the end of Mark chapter 7, and we're going to go through a good chunk of chapter 8. But before we get going, let's stop. Let's pray. Lord, you're so kind to give us a glimpse of things to come, and they are mysterious. But your promises, they always come true. And when they do come true and we look back, it's like, wow, how did we miss it? So God, Father, please give us eyes to see and ears to hear you. And we ask that in your Son's wonderful name, Jesus. Amen. All right. So, Mark chapter 7, verse 31. We're going to go through chapter 8, verse 26. Oh, this Bible's starting to crack. Well, then Jesus returned from the region of Tyre and went through Sidon to the Sea of Galilee, in the region of the Decapolis. And they brought to him a man who was deaf and had had a speech impediment. And they begged him to lay his hand on him. And taking him aside from the crowd privately, he put his fingers into his ears, and after spitting, touched his tongue. And looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, Ephphatha, that is, be opened. And his ears were opened, his tongue was released, and he spoke plainly. And Jesus charged him, or rather charged them, to tell no one. But the more he charged them, the more zealously they proclaimed it. And they were astonished beyond measure, saying, He has done all things well. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. So mind you, he is going back to Decapolis, which is 10 cities, Polis city, Deca 10. And this is also the same region where the very hyper-infused, demonic possessed man was, right? Where all the demons went into the pigs. So he's working his way back over there. And he comes across this deaf man. And I remember way back in the day, somebody noticed this. And so I'll just pass it on. Have you noticed how Jesus sighs? And just think about that. Like, he's like, Father. And it's like, what's going on there? What's going on with the sigh? Is he sighing out of just, kind of a desperation, or an anxiety, like, or a weariness, or I don't think it's probably like a not again. But mull it over. Love to hear what you think the sign's about. Because he's definitely, there's something that Mark's trying to get across to us about that, right? In those days when, again, a great crowd had gathered and they had nothing to eat, he called his disciples to him and said to him, Have compassion on the crowd, because they have been with me now 3 days. They've got nothing to eat. If I send them away hungry to their homes, they're going to faint on the way, and some of them have come from very far away. And his disciples answered him, How can one feed these people with the bread here in this desolate place? So Jesus asked them, How many loaves do you have? They said, 7. And he directed the crowd to sit down on the ground. And he took the 7 loaves, and having given thanks, he broke them and gave them to his disciples to set before the people. And they set them before the crowd. And they had a few small fish, and having blessed them, he said, that these also should be set before him. And they ate and were satisfied. And they took up the broken pieces left over, 7 baskets full. And there were about 4,000 people. And he sent them away. And immediately he got into the boat with his disciples and went to the district of Dalmanutha. And I know I shared that story from a while ago, just about me having an experience, just where there's this tri-T at this spiritual sort of very powerful event in an A-frame building. It was a missions meeting, and God's Spirit was there, and the chai never ran out. And I was the server, and it just kept pouring and pouring and pouring and pouring. And the thought of these events, right, the loaves, was clear in my heart and my head. Like I could hear it like this, that it was going in. It was like, I only looked once, and I like opened it, and I was like, there's like this much chai right at the bottom of this thing. And I closed it up, and I never looked again. And I just believed that the chai would keep going. And I'm not saying I did that. I think God did that. And I was just watching God work. And I never told anybody what happened. I don't think I ever told that story. And the only reason I share with you now is that I think that God does this stuff. And he does it for a purpose. For that time, it was 1, to bless the people. And 2, for me and my faith. And this was, 20 years ago. Events like that have a profound impact on a believer, especially, just for the kind of ministry and life that God's had for me. So, yeah, I think that baskets of bread can be gathered from just a handful of loaves. It does happen. The Pharisees came and began to argue with him, seeking from him a sign from heaven to test him. So to try and test Jesus. And sign, that means miracle. So why does this generation seek a sign? Truly I say to you, no sign will be given to this generation. And he left them and got into the boat again and went to the other side. So they're wanting to test him and get a miracle out of him. It's like, do a dance, monkey. Perform for us, circus act. And it's like, that's not how it works. And the crazy thing is they could have just seen it had they been there, right, following him honestly, but they weren't. But he also doesn't submit to their authority, right? And that's not how miracles work. And I think also that's maybe why sometimes God doesn't do miracles from people who, if you come to him with that pharisaical heart, well, I'm not going to believe until God does a miracle for me. And if he doesn't, then he's not real. And therefore I'm acquitted from any judgment, I'm free of the possibility that this is true. That's not how God works. Sometimes God is very, very gracious and does a miraculous thing for somebody who's seeking him, but hasn't quite yet put their true faith in him. I believe that's true. There's plenty of testimonies. I think in my own life, I saw a little bit of that. So for sure, actually. But I don't think when we come at God and say, do a miracle for me, and I'll believe. That's not how he rolls. So just be careful. Here's a clear example where the Pharisees came at him like that. Now, they had forgotten to bring bread. That's the disciples. They're in the boat, right? And they had only 1 loaf with them in the boat. And he cautioned them, saying, watch out, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. Lard is yeast. It's the stuff that makes bread rise. And in the Jewish culture, even though actually not against the law to have leaven in your bread, it was for certain kinds of things like feasts, like the Feast of Unleavened Bread. But in this case, he's talking about leaven being in the bread and causing it to rise, and it spreads, right? It just spreads through the dough. And they began discussing with one another the fact that they had no bread. And Jesus, aware of this, said to him, sorry, I'm laughing because it's kind of funny. Why are you discussing the fact that you have no bread? Don't you yet perceive or get it? Are your hearts hardened? Having eyes, do you not see? And having ears, do you not hear? And do you not remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, or how many baskets full of broken pieces did you take up? They said to him, 12. And the 7 for the 4,000, how many baskets full of broken pieces did you take up? And they said to him, well, 7. And he said to them, do you not yet understand? So I guess the question is do you get it? What is the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of King Herod in this gospel? And they came to Bethsaida, and some people brought to him a blind man and begged him to touch him. And he took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. And when he had spit on his eyes and laid his hands on him, he asked him, do you see anything? And he looked up and said, I see men, but they look like trees walking around. Then Jesus laid his hands on his eyes again, and he opened his eyes. His sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. And he sent him to his home, saying, do not even enter the village. So, quick note, sometimes healing comes in stages. And the other note I would make on this is, again, Jesus isn't doing these things to make much of himself or to inspire other people's faith. And sometimes he does heal people in front of a lot of people, right? Again, it's not either or, it's and also. You have to have discernment. When and where is the context, and why is he doing things? Sometimes in public and sometimes in private, right? But sometimes healing comes in stages. And Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi. And on the way, he asked the disciples, who do people say that I am? And they told him, well, John the Baptist, and others say Elijah, and others, one of the prophets. And he asked them, but who do you say that I am? Peter answered him, you're the Christ. And he strictly charged them to tell no one about him. Who are you? Who do people say that I am? And I know I've kind of gone past the little section that I said I'd read, but I just can't help myself. People ask all the time, who is Jesus? And they come at him in all kinds of ways. And they say, well, this book was written by scholars, not these fishermen and yahoos from back in the day. It's written by scholars. And some people think, well, the Bible, it's been handed down through all these different religious groups. It's been altered and the true Bible is hidden, and all these weird conspiracy theories about it, even though they're all like really obviously not right. Did you know that you can reproduce the Bible from just most of the Bible, literally from people quoting it in ancient Arabic, from letters and missives, things being communicated? I believe it's 85,000 different letters sent there's all kinds of ways that this Bible is like proven true, like that you have what the Bible is. And although there's some very subtle changes just in tone or just you know, very minor words like the or it, like is like the major change. There are very few major changes in this text, and it is not as fragile, okay? Even if you accept all the changes that anyone could possibly find in the text, okay, the truth, like the object of what that section or whatever the thing is being talked about in the Bible isn't changed. Okay? So it's like getting a scratch on your car. And you uncover the base paint layer, right? And you're like, oh, there's a little white there. And then there's another scratch and another scratch. And then somebody goes, well, hey, there's some imperfections on that. And you're like, yeah, there are. And they're like, well, then it's not the same color. It's not blue. And you're looking at it and you're like, it's a blue car. Yeah, it's got a few little flicks on it, but it doesn't change the fact that it's a blue car or that it is a car, right? And that's what people want to do with the Bible. They want to go, oh, well, you know, there's a couple little changes here and this and that. And they're like, and then they want to all of a sudden say that it's not the Bible and that it's not saying what it says. That's like somebody saying there's a couple scratches on your car and therefore it's not the color that it is at its true paint, and that they take it even farther and they twist it all around and go, well, it's not even a car. That's literally how far people go with their logic. But I think I want to just say here about Peter is that he gets at the core, the car. He's like, it's a blue car. You're the Christ. And some other people are like, well, I don't know. It could be a this or it could be a that. It could be a boat. They're like, it could be a prophet. It could be Elijah, who was a prophet. Was John the Baptist resurrected? And part of the point, well, maybe the main point of why I'm doing this Bible study this way, and we're not going super deep and digging around and getting so much context and really cool details and digging down. It's not that we aren't seeing interesting points or whatever as we're going through this. The point is we're just trying to see, what is the Bible saying to us? First, I'm reading it through, and two, I'm hopefully showing you clearly where we're getting at. So, yeah. Anyway, tomorrow's day 52. We'll talk to you soon. God bless. Bye-bye.